Hello guys, my name's Theo Goff, host of the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. Now today we're going to do an episode on what causes dyslexia, what causes of dyslexia. I think it'll be a very interesting one to do. And guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell a friend, please leave a comment, please tell me what impact it made on your life, because it really helps me and motivates me to create these and spend a lot of time and effort making these the best I can. I hope you enjoy today's episode, guys. So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe, where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be? Or in other words, conquer their dyslexia. That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. Hello guys, I hope we're doing good. Now, today we're going to have a conversation and dive into the topic about what causes dyslexia. And how is someone dyslexic? Because 20% of the population have dyslexia or dyslexic tendencies or some dyslexic traits. And people may say there's a difference between, you can have dyslexic traits, but yet not be fully diagnosed with dyslexia, and there's sister abilities or there's other things to explain these difficulties that some dyslexics face, and they may not be dyslexic, they might be called something else. And I first off wanting to say, the way that we begin to think and the way that we begin to operate as a dyslexic person, I like to use it as the umbrella as a neurodiverse person. Because I see things as if we're neurodiverse, which means we're slightly different than the norm. We would know that things that we do, how we think, how we operate, is slightly different than the norm. And then we can begin to, I think visually, I do this differently. And then we can start to realize, this is dyslexia, or is this dyspraxia, dyscalculia? And then start to branch off to these other things. That's more of an ADHD trait. And there's a very heavy linkage between dyslexia and ADHD. And these other things like dyspraxia and dyscalculia, there is linkages between these things, and partly because they do share a lot of commonalities, like the way a dyslexic brain is really creative, really outside the box thinking, and also how some of our difficulties can lead us to behave in a certain way. How growing up in an environment that can be very, very hard and honestly in some cases very traumatic can lead to some ADHD tendencies of you're always focusing on different things or moving from one thing to another. And so I want to get to what causes dyslexia. Now, simply putting, it's genetics. It's passing down from generation to generation to generation. You might say, "Oh, wait, Theo, but I'm dyslexic, and yet my mum or dad doesn't show that big signs of dyslexia." Well, for me, I'm extremely dyslexic, but my mum is dyslexic, nowhere near as severe as me, and I suspect my dad has some tendencies there. He's never been diagnosed for it. It's never bad. His reading and writing is not bad at all, but he has got some tendencies. He's extremely messy, extremely forgetful, and these sort of things. And my mum's not messy or not extremely forgetful, but yet her reading and writing is bad. And so I'm guessing for myself, I could have a mixture of those two different, diversities in themselves, and then be have this concoction saying, yes, you're 10 times worse than your mum and dad put together. And then also there's the other argument that it could possibly skip genes. Your grandmother could have this dyslexia or have this difference. And maybe in their time they were alive, you mean it wouldn't be as well known. You mean people wouldn't say things, people may have called it something else, may have said, I'll just hide it, I'll just go over it, or just called it being lazy. And then so they didn't really know they had this thing called dyslexia, and it passed down to you. These genes carry on. Because a big part of, there's a big part, I forget the word, some sort of psychology, but basically when there's something happened to your grandmother, something happens to your mother, that it can be passed down. Because something happened, there's this like, there's this thing like when you're pregnant, when a woman's pregnant, when a woman's in the room and they experience something, the baby knows about it. Or when something happens that fundamentally changes a person, their baby, especially if you're a mother, the baby would have something about that. And some sort of linkage is there about that. But basically to answer the question, okay, what is dyslexia? Another way of putting it is that there's what's known as there's 6 genes for dyslexics that can use to cause dyslexia, and you can get passed down from generation to generation to generation. And then if I answer the question, okay, what actually is dyslexia? What actually is this thing that gets passed down, and how does it affect? Because there is some, not massive amount, there's some studies to be shown that how dyslexia can be brought on like in the early years of life due to changes in the environment and certain things. And say there is more of an argument to be made for things like ADHD, that how the environment can affect the way that the kid's managing and processing. I don't believe dyslexia is like that. I don't personally believe that it can be caught on later in life. I believe, yes, your brain is developing and moulding, and there might be a section where your brain moulds differently than other people, or stops developing in a certain way like the neurotypical people does. But I don't think that something happens in the environment. I think there's something pre-built in your DNA to elicit that response. And that is basically because of the genes of the parents that passed on and passed on. Now, let's just say that you have these dyslexia, you have these difficulties that you have because of dyslexia, reading and writing, organisation, and so on. Now, what's to say that your environment can affect that heavily? For example, your ability to concentrate, your ability to focus, your ability to prioritize, your ability to keep things organised. Your surroundings heavily affect you. And you could make the argument of saying, okay, having a certain diet, having a certain lifestyle can make the difficulties of dyslexia so much more worse. Because I've experienced it a lot, not too much now to be honest, but I remember growing up and some days I could read a book, I could read a page. And some days I found it so hard. And I get that a little bit now, but I don't notice it nearly as much. I remember people like, oh, well done, Theo, you read that whole page, or you're reading really good today, you're really improving. And then me thinking, like, I don't know what's different. I know I can read better, but I don't know why. And the next day I'd come in and I'd read worse. I don't know why. I just get these ups and downs and ebbs and flows of my abilities. And you maybe experience these as well yourself. And the argument can be said to the environment around you. Say, if you're happy, if you're doing the right things, if you have a right diet, because diet massively affects your learning, massively affects your mood. If you have a bad diet, your mood will be ups and down. You mean the anxiety, all these old things are replaced. Diet has a massive effect in yourself, because think about it, the actual atoms of what you eat become you, and then you're using that as actual fuel. And if you don't use effective fuel sources, then your abilities and capabilities will be massively diminished if you don't optimize your nutrition in a sense. And this is learning, this is operating, this is functioning in the everyday world. And I know, like, for myself, if I have an environment that I can thrive in, if I set up the environment where I can eat right, where I can do the things that's best for my head, where I can get organized, there's very, very little that can stop me. I'm so much more better. You mean, like, yes, I may find it hard to read or write, but I'm in the flow. I'm always finding solutions. I'm always doing a lot of things. And thereby you can make the argument that my dyslexic difficulties aren't as bad. Or aren't as bad as it was if compared to, like, if I had a perfect week, like I set up the week, I had good, fuel sources, I had good setup, good routines, good habits, good organization. You could make the argument that for that week, my dyslexic difficulties wouldn't be nearly as bad as this other week where I had a really bad diet, really bad this, really bad that. So, to say what causes dyslexia is, yes, it's genetic. Okay, if you're dyslexic, if you're not dyslexic, it's genetic. But what helps you, that's not to say that you'll never get rid of dyslexia, because dyslexia makes you a unique person. It's not a subset of difficulties. It's a different brain wiring. But there is argument to say that you can massively increase and decrease the negative side effect of dyslexia based upon your environment, based upon your decisions, based upon the fuel you eat, based upon your creating certain routines that can help you and certain routines that can't help you, based upon these thoughts that are based upon having these thoughts. And then basically if you have these thoughts and beliefs like, you can't do it, you're not enough, why this, you always fail, then that make you feel a certain way. And then you'd always fail, and then you always never put enough work in, and you set up things for failure. And then you set up, like, literally, if you say, okay, I can't read this thing, or I'll never be able to read, your brain will tell you won't be able to read, and you won't put in the work and the effort. But if you change that belief, saying, okay, I can learn to read, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, but with persistence I can do this, and then your brain will go, okay, and you can learn to read harder and harder and harder. Now, I'm saying this a little bit from my own experience, because in 1 year, first year of my being at my sixth form, 1,000 kids, extremely scary, went through my own massive journey. But something I learned there is that I got obsessed with improving my English. I changed my beliefs about improving my English. I had such strong reasons to improve it. I improved my reading and writing ability 500% more in 1 year, having little to no help compared to 8 years having the best help in the world. 8 years of being inside a dyslexic school. Now, why is that? It wasn't because I had better help, better support. That's because I changed the internal dialogue in my head. I changed what I believed about myself. And because I changed what I believed about myself and changed my environment around me, my habits and my rituals, that set me up to have a massive growth in my learning. And that wasn't because my dyslexia got any easier. That's because I'd done certain things to overcome my challenges, to overcome these things. So the answer is here. I know I'm kind of explaining this in a really fun way. The answer is this. Okay, what causes dyslexia? Dyslexia is inherently down to genes and parents and grandparents and so on and so forth. That's how you are different in a dyslexic way. And then how does dyslexia affect you in your lifetime? Is that you can set habits, routines, work on it, create understandings to work on it, so then the negative side of dyslexia does not have nearly as much hold on you compared to if you didn't work on it, compared to if you didn't set the routines up, compared to if you just let things happen, and then if you find things hard, you say you can't do it. And I always use it in two different things, two decisions we make. One, we can let dyslexia use us, or two, we can use dyslexia. And another way of putting it is that you don't let dyslexia stop you. And how you do is you set up habits, you set up routines, you understand things, you educate yourself by watching these things, and you go out there and you really try again each day. And then, not say that difficulties don't go away, but saying you develop these coping strategies to make them so much more less. And so, guys, that is the answer to how is dyslexia caused? Like, how does it happen per se? You can never ever get rid of it, and I never want to get rid of it. I want my kids to have dyslexia, quite frankly, because I know how much stronger it would make them as a person, and because I know how much stronger it has made me as a person. It's not a curse. It's not something that needs to be cured. It's not something that needs to get rid of from the human. If dyslexia was gone, if the dyslexic brain, dyslexic thinking was gone from humanity, there'd be so much more less inventions, so much more less interventions, creations moving forward. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you all again soon. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Now, I got something really exciting I want to share with you. Over the last 5 years, I've been absolutely obsessed with learning everything I can about dyslexia and how they can overcome their challenges and maximize their strengths. And I've been spending many hours on many days scouring the internet to find solutions to the problems. And I found many solutions. So over quarantine, I was thinking, what if I scour the internet again? What if I go through every last resource that I've been through before and take everything that's useful and put it into one place? And that's how I filled up a lot of my time in quarantine. I scoured the internet and found all the most inspirational, all the most informational, all the most useful videos about dyslexia out there and put them all into one place, so you don't have to waste time scouring the internet to find solutions to your problems, so you know there's only one place to go. And this thing I created is called the Dyslexia Black Book. You can get it at conqueringdyslexia.net/Black Book. Now, I'm wanting to offer this to you and present this to you completely for free because I want to save you time. I want to save you time, so scouring the internet and not finding the answers like I've done. If you go to conqueringdyslexia.net/Black Book, Conquering Dyslexia Black Book, you'll find it. Or guys, you can just click the link in this episode description to find it. But yeah, guys, that's the special message I wanted to share with you today.